Okay, Dino Tracy, you fairly recently published the State of Observability Report 2025. Be good to start with maybe the high level findings and then we can drill down in a bit more detail.
Perfect. Yeah, that sounds good. Well, I think there's a couple, I guess, of the key interesting themes from my perspective, and one of that is, I guess for the first time we see AI adoption is universal. Yeah, 100% of of the respondents, I said that they are using AI, and obviously, we can touch into, I guess, the main avenues of that. I think typically there's some well-trodden roads, so to speak, in the world of AI and where it's leveraged, and it feels like every organization now is at least using them down these well-trodden roads. But outside of that, there's a big focus on real-time detection, but both when it comes to security risks and anomalies, but also there's a big focus when it comes to the ROI drivers, and that's both for observability. But also for AI initiatives, right? There is a big focus on ROI, and organizations really wanting to make sure that, I guess, they are, I guess, succeeding in what they're intending to do. But also they're doing so in an efficient manner. Not every organization has hundreds and hundreds of millions to pour into these things to make them a success. So I think it's also I guess a strong eye towards making sure that it's these are efficient and scalable as they bring them into production.
Okay, and in terms of the AI, you say pretty much everyone is adopting some kind of AI in the enterprise. I don't know if the report found out or anecdotally because clearly the sort of chat GPT and similar products, I guess, is where many people started, but we're now seeing agentic AI sort of become more interest, shall we say. Just I guess, are you able to characterize where folks might be on their AI adoption journeys?
Yeah, for sure. So I'd say certainly within operations, data management, AI governance. I think these are the I guess the big areas where adoption is pretty common. I think data management, for example, 57% of the response to the report were leveraging AI. Apologies, in this area. So I feel like there is, I guess, a strong use there. And obviously, you mentioned agentic AI. I think when it comes to the world of AI, I think you're absolutely right. I think most people in their personal lives have used, Gen AI of some form, ChatGPT, Gemini, Copilot, etc. But I feel like within organizations, I guess, there's still a reluctance there, certainly to be on the kind of tip of the spear, so to speak, right, the bleeding edge. And even the organizations that are, I guess, using AI pretty heavily, there's still, I guess, a lot of human in the loop, right? I think it was 69%, if I remember correctly, of these decisions made by AI are being, run past a human, right, internally. So I feel like, I guess there is a big question mark still around trust. Nobody wants to be that person who, is using ChatGPT and inputs, I don't know, some code or some piece of data from their organization that's going to make them liable, right? So I feel like there's still very much a trust aspect there, both for the organization, but also for the individual, and making sure that the individual feels safe with using AI, both in their personal life, but also, within the workplace.
So maybe, I mean, you mentioned the governance as well. Is it fair to say at the moment that because it's relatively new within the workplace, a lot of organizations are still struggling to understand or put in place an effective policy as to sort of how and when and what kind of AI is being used? Are we in danger of having the sort of BYOD type thing, shadow IT, where people are kind of going using AI without really, the company being aware of it? Yeah, what do you think's going on?
Yeah, for sure. I think there is. And when it comes to the AI governance piece, I think that it's obviously partly on the organization to make sure that their end users are safe in leveraging the AI, right? So, for example, making sure they've got the correct guardrails in place, right? If they're bringing an AI initiative, say from pre-production into production, ensuring they've got the relevant safeguards in place, they've got an eye towards the efficiency and the cost operation of it and things like that. So, I think that having a big focus on that is obviously a key priority of many organizations today. The top reliability concerns really, from the report found it was data quality and data privacy, right? So there's still, I guess, a huge concern there. And for the individual, to your point around shadow IT, I feel like there are lots of individuals at the moment, within companies that want to use AI, right? Certainly because they maybe there's a fear of being replaced, right? Yeah, where I guess a lot of the media coverage is around that. So they want to be seen to be, some of the adopters, right, and welcoming it. But I feel like there's always going to be a concern that they expose themselves, right, and they become liable within their organization. So yeah, I think when it comes to the whole governance aspect, there are a lot of organizations now that obviously are really trying to focus in on what how they can do that in real time. Because obviously, you also need to catch these things in real time, and that's really why observability is I think is becoming the control plane for AI in a lot of ways, is because they're able to implement these and monitor that this data set in real time. And also, I think if you're able to accurately track the impact and the ROI, as well as the success of say your guardrails and things like that, you're going to I guess boost confidence not just from the organization and maybe the C-suite in the introduction of AI into their business, but you want to also empower your user base a lot more, I think, right? They're going to feel a lot safer because they know that these things are being monitored, they are being reported upon, there are processes in place to protect them, and I feel like that will drastically see an adoption increase, and obviously therefore hopefully a larger increase in the ROI that they give. Apologies, long-winded answer, but I think there's a lot when it comes to the governance aspect.
No, for sure. And in terms of observability, I mean, I've been following it since I think it was called AI Ops originally, and then observability has become the sort of the well, relatively new term. But is observability's time sort of finally arrived because of AI? I mean, I know people were doing things, but it was perhaps not as quickly or as comprehensively adopted as one might have thought. And now with AI, is as I say, is that it now observability is very much what's required to ensure that AI doesn't get out of sort of control, if you like.
Yeah, I think it's yeah, I think it's a good question because I think when it comes down to, I guess, observability, there is, and its growth. I mean, I think when I first joined Dynatrace over a decade ago now, it was APM, right? Was one of the biggest terms that was bandied around, and I think when through its growth, really within APM to observability, there's been such, I guess, a vast increase in the scope. Primarily APM was originally kind of introduced from a pre-production perspective, making sure your applications are performant and empowering your troubleshooting aspects, empowering ops. And from then it's kind of consistently grown. And where I think that AI is really, I guess, bringing observability to the forefront is in two main areas. First of all is reducing the barrier to entry when it comes to observability. For example, right, you don't require, I guess, such a huge, talented skill set, to successfully leverage, an observability platform if you have an AI engine there that is, supporting and, driving that, right? To give you an example, if you have the AI engine within an observability platform, which is becoming well, is for the first time the primary selection candidate for an observability solution, is the fact that driving that automated root cause analysis to the end users, so they don't have to I guess go through all of this vast quantities of data and metrics, but it's actually being proactively surfaced primarily through an ITSM solution or something like that to the end user. That's when an organization can kind of really leverage a 90% reduction, right, in the meantime to identify a problem, right? So I feel like the barrier to entry has been massively reduced, as part of that. So I feel like that is certainly a really big driver, for I guess for the success and the doubling down really within observability, but also the monitoring of these of these AI initiatives. I think obviously both within the State of Observability report, obviously that we released, but also within the MIT's report, AI in the state of AI in business in 2025, I believe is the report. But in both of those, there is such a heavy emphasis on the ROI and the success of these initiatives and being so closely tied to the ability to observe its performance, report on its efficiency. So I feel like again, it's like twofold, reducing the barrier to entry, but also I guess the focus on every organization wanting to capitalize on the benefits of AI, but doing so in a safer, more predictable, and more cost-effective way is really pushing observability, to the forefront of a lot of people's minds now, I think, as a result.
Okay, and in terms of measuring the ROI of observability relating to AI initiatives, I guess uptime and mean time to resolution are perhaps the standard ones. Are there any other ways that are useful to understand how well observability is doing its job? I say other than those two, perhaps fairly standard ones.
Yeah, for sure. There's a few different ways, really. Obviously, we covered off, I guess, things like guardrails and things like that. I guess earlier in our conversation. So, to give I guess, another key driver that was, showcased within the report was that nearly half of the respondents anticipate that the big part of their ROI is going to be driven through optimizing model configurations, for these AI initiatives. And I think a large, I guess, driver of that is the sheer cost, associated with, these, data models for these AI initiatives. So it's far easier, in many ways, to tune the engine, so to speak, rather than rebuild the engine, right? And I think the optimizing on these model configurations as a result is a really large focus point because by leveraging an observability platform, they can much more drastically really tune that model to get a lot more ROI out of it without having to make such a large investment from that within that initiative itself, but also making sure that again performance is a big part of this, right? Making sure that performance degradation won't occur too much, all the way through to also you don't want it to impact the ESG model, or certification that the organization might have. Obviously there's a few different green certificates, if you like, out there. But obviously, as many organizations have made commitments to hit a certain grades within that area. And the last thing, you want these organizations to do is to introduce an AI initiative. And then all of a sudden they've dropped a boundary, right, when it comes to the green aspect because of the sheer compute requirement, associated with AI. So, yeah, I think that, there's some really big drivers within that area. And then I guess the final one really is the business observability aspect. So having all of this data within your observability platform, from within your environment, including AI initiatives, you can really understand what the impact of that is, in terms of to your business. So say for example, you're an e-commerce website and you're focusing on the reduction of cart abandonment, right? You know that 1% cart abandonment may cost you, 100K an hour as an example, and you're really trying to reduce that. Well, if you're creating an AI initiative, to have a chatbot there to, help with, I don't know, postcode identification or the mail process or etc. And you implement that, and then you see actually it's actually improved your cart abandonment rate, that you can track that ROI. But in order to do that effectively, you need your platform to observe everything from that kind of that end user's first entry point, within your website, all the way through your typical applications, but obviously also how their interactions with an AI chatbot or a Gen AI solution, etc. So there is the business observability aspect is really going to be driving a huge portion of this because it's the easiest to tie to ROI, right? Cut abandonment rate, I think, is one clear example, but it could really be anything, right? It could be hotel occupancy rate, right? Yeah, for a hotel chain. It could be the mortgage application process, right, for a bank. So there is so much insight that you could be driven, through that same data set.
Okay, so is it possible to kind of produce a list of capabilities that are pretty much table stakes when folks are choosing observability platforms, particularly for this, sort of AI heavy tech stacks that is increasingly the norm? Yeah, and is there a standard set of capabilities that folks would need to have?
Yeah, I think I think previously there was within I guess observer APM as it was and observability as it is today. I think having the typically I guess a large portion of the capabilities is based around what technologies do you support and things like this. But with obviously this report showcasing that AI capabilities are now the number one selection criteria. I think there is a huge focus on what it is that is providing and really making sure that the platform that an organization is choosing is not just fit for today and they're being able to benefit from AI today, but also kind of longer term. So, for example, I mentioned earlier automated root cause analysis, within your environment, and that is obviously a big section criteria for today. But in terms of tomorrow, you mentioned agentic AI earlier. Then also being having a capability and a vision, right, to actually showcase and support when customers do start bringing in and monitoring agentic AI, that you as an organization or as an observability platform are prepared to help them and support them in that endeavor, and to continue to drive, all of the, I guess, the necessary data sets they need, right? Is it scalable, cost effective, and things like that. And scalability really is, I guess, one of the largest drivers, really, because, with the, I guess, the AI initiatives in general, obviously there is a huge amount of data, right, that needs to be consumed. And scalability is obviously going to be a big part of that because typically, right, the more data you have, the more accurate it's going to be, the more successful it's going to be. So scalability, I think, is also a big driver, right? There's big asks, and there's also been a huge amount of growth in this area. We've gone from only a couple of years ago, customers saying, okay, we got 10 terabytes, right, and things like that, to now, we're talking petabytes, of ingest, and that is such I guess, a huge growth in a short amount of time. What would it be 5 years from now, right, when agentic AI is potentially in production, interacting with every other organization, let's say, or third party, maybe, through the agentic workflows. There's just going to be such a huge volume of data there, right, that needs to be, I guess, interacted with, but also, end users, they're going to need the help of AI to analyze all of that data, right? It's going to be a big driver of that as well. So, yeah, I think certainly scalability, and also just making sure that that platform is prepared for the future, I think is going to be a big part of that.
Okay, and I'm also wondering, does observability have a role to play when it comes to helping IT leaders decide what to prioritize when building truly AI native experiences, which again, I guess is where people are increasingly headed?
Yeah, for sure. I think the one of the primary roles in this area, and I guess a bit of a I guess a side move, from myself, is the cultural aspect, right? So don't get me wrong. Obviously, from a technical perspective, there are many, I guess, benefits really that that can be lended towards that, I guess, that endeavor. But the fact that you can break down silos within an organization, from a cultural aspect, is such a transformational, I guess, part of it, right? That's often, I guess, not spoken about as much. I guess a lot of the conversation is centered around, do you have this particular capability, right, in order to support my AI initiative, et cetera, et cetera. But if you take an agentic, workflow, and say that is interacting with your on-prem or your more legacy applications internally, as an organization, but it's also interacting with third parties, credit checks, postcode lookups, that kind of thing, all on behalf of the user. In order to, I guess, if you're troubleshooting that problem, or if you're trying to, do business observability, right, and kind of get that end-to-end view, you're really empowering all of these, I guess, different teams, across these organizations in order to work together better, and you're breaking down those silos. So I feel like one of the biggest aspects there that can really, support that, truly, AI native experience is that breakdown of silos, is having that unified format, in order to be able to interact with one another, right? So you can be very open with your, with a third party, let's say, right, in sharing the data sets and collaborating in a more effective way. And I feel like there is a huge cultural aspect there. And generally speaking, you know, um, maturity models is a term that's been bandied around within ABM and observability for a long time. But if you're looking towards the more, I guess, mature organizations out there, they're the ones that have already kind of transcended their typical, boundaries and silos, right? They're collaborating much more effectively. You've got, marketing teams leveraging the observability platform to see the effectiveness of a post on a social media platform, right? As an example, all being done within, the observability platform, which, going back, a few years, has been traditionally focused on, pre-production, code analysis, right? So I feel like that has been such a transformative piece, and will really help these organizations move to that more, AI native, I guess, way of working, because you're really going to have to, break down these boundaries, collaborate, more openly, but also monitor the entire interaction from that end user all the way through your, your potential agentic AI interactions with their legacy applications, etc. So, it's a softer point, let's say, within the cultural aspects, but I think it's really a very very important aspect that organizations face really when they adopting both AI but also observability is kind of reevaluating their kind of the culture and the processes that they have today, and will they support that adoption, right, and that growth into an AI native world.
Okay, and I suspect you may well say you've covered it all, but I'll ask anyway, and if you have, just say. But in terms of how observability is really helping to unlock the full potential of AI-driven decision support, are there? I say as you've answered, I think you've covered some of it, but are there any particular points that you think are worth emphasizing when it comes to the benefits?
Uh, yeah, I guess I've covered a fair bit in this. And to summarize that, I guess is observability really becomes the central nervous system, or for that kind of the AI driven world. And I feel like all of the telemetry there are big drivers, but I feel like the one of the biggest potential areas to unlock really is that business observability side of things. That there is such a really what customers are, I guess, are doing today is really mind blowing. For example, if you're a utility customer and you've got to keep an eye on vulnerable customers, right? And the vulnerable customer may be identified as a customer that's made missed two consecutive payments, just as an example. Being able to proactively monitor that and then potentially trigger an AI an agentic AI interaction where there was that proactive outreach, right? Hey, how are things going? Is we've seen these missed payments, etc. And that is not only providing a better experience for both the organization because they're proactively surfacing their customers, the end user, right? They feel there is that almost care, right? There's that immediate outreach, to them, but also from a compliance perspective, right? Is off-gem compliance that there's also making sure that you're being compliant within that. So I feel like there is so much potential that could be opened up there, right? For example, customer you tried to make a booking failed. Hey, here's a voucher. Would you like to go through the booking process with this AI chatbot outreach to you directly and things like that? I feel like there is such a huge potential there to enhance both, obviously, everyday lives, right? Mine, I've got two kids under three, right? Their world is going to be no doubt very, very heavily influenced by AI, right? In the future, and I've got to prepare them for that, but also for organizations, right, and businesses, and in order to make sure that they are as being as effective and as efficient as possible, really. So yeah, I feel like the whole business aspect is the piece that really motivates, I think, and drives me because it enhances the experience for all involved in many ways, right? So yeah, I think that's really going to be where we see some explosions, for sure.
Okay, and maybe just slightly changing tack, if you're happy to. I know, Don Tracy, you've fairly recently made an announcement, I think a partnership with Crest Data around observability migration. And then I think also you got a partnership with ServiceNow or a collaboration announcement with ServiceNow. Are you happy just to tell us, a little bit about both of those?
Yeah, for sure. So I guess just to speak generally around it, if we take the service now piece as an example, there are with the I guess the agentic AI workflows and the future, are, I guess, of many organizations and SaaS companies and things like that. There is a whole new, I guess, potential of collaboration that's been unlocked, right? Through use of AI, and as part of that partnership, really, is that I guess that kind of exploring, looking into that world. There's going to be some announcements, right, that won't be for me to make, but I feel like there's lots of organizations today that are looking to partnership in many different ways, and I guess that is certainly going to be AI will be a big part of that, right? Because it's unlocking this potential. If you're within one application interacting with another, right? We already see use cases of that today, as an example, especially within the development world, within the IDE and their capability to to interact with various products around that. So yeah, I feel like there's going to be a lot in that area. Obviously, within many organizations collaborating because there's this. Oh, hang on, there's a potential agentic AI workflow here that could interact between these applications, which enhance the users of both applications, right? So yeah, I feel like there's definitely going to be a lot of announcements in that area. And then when it comes to the migration aspects, A lot of I guess customers to and organizations today, when they're looking at any piece of software, really, they're looking into how they can more quickly migrate between I guess different products, and obviously Crest support that that aspect. So yeah, I think there's going to be a lot of support out there, that's becoming available, for them to, to support these migration efforts. Much like I guess there was many companies that are around that supported, for example, cloud transformation, and migration efforts. So I feel like it's just almost like a growth of that aspect.
Excellent. I mean, it's been fantastic to chat, and thank you so much for sharing great insights into the results of the report and your thoughts on what's going on in the observability space, and then obviously the bits of news at the end. So, Joshua, I really appreciate your time.